Call this meeting to order. Oh, sorry, Chief, you're logged out. Okay. See, good Boy Scout. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. At this time, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. We begin the meeting this morning by acknowledging that the Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattah-Wendoronk, Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara Police Services Board stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'll do a roll call. Member D'Angela.
Present.
Member Eek.
Here.
Member Gale.
Here.
And Member Gibson.
Present.
And Member McKendrick and Lawson are away. Are there any conflicts of interest? Thank you. Adoption of the minutes moved by members D'Angelo and Eek. The minutes of the public board meeting held Thursday, October 27th, 2022 be received. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's carried. Chair's report. This time, on behalf of the board, I'd like to recognize Kevin Gibson, who is attending his final police services board meeting today after serving a 4-year term that commenced on December the 13th of 2018. During his tenure on the board, Member Gibson served with professionalism and dedication, and he committed an enormous amount of time and energy to several important policing issues. His contributions to police governance and board discussions will be greatly missed. So on behalf of the board and its staff, we extend our appreciation to the valuable contributions made by Member Gibson, and we wish him and his family much happiness and good health for many years to come. Member Gibson will be invited to an upcoming meeting in the new year for formal recognition of his service as a member of the Police Services Board. Anything to add?
Well, thank you very much for all those kind words, Chair.
Thanks. If we ever services advisor, he's online. Okay. On behalf of the board, I'd like to welcome Dave Tilley to the meeting. David is with the Inspectorate of Policing at the Ministry of the Solicitor General, and he serves as Policing Services Advisor to police boards within Ontario. He's at our meeting virtually today as part of our routine visit by police services advisors to police boards across the province, and we're pleased to see his continued attendance at our meetings. The Canadian Association of Police Governance hosts monthly webinars as part of its educational strategy to keep police boards and police executives across Canada apprised of issues currently impacting the policing community. There was a webinar on November the 17th entitled Excellence in Police Governance, and a virtual governance summit is being held on November the 24th at 1 p.m. on the future of policing and police governance. On December 6th at 12 p.m. a webinar session entitled Measuring Success of Your Police Leadership will be held. On November 9th and 10th, the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards held their annual labor conference at the Toronto Airport Marriott. The program provided learning opportunities about the labor relations landscape across Ontario, police executive contracts, legal matters, and insights into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and police hiring practices. The board's executive director and I attended the conference on behalf of the board. I was disappointed. I was supposed to give a presentation on our contract, and the session we were doing that in went way off the rails, and we didn't get to present anything. But I did speak to 2 associations that showed some concern during their negotiations on some of the successes that we had here within Niagara under Member Lawson's leadership on the negotiating team. So they will be reaching out to us if they need anything further to either to EA Reed or Member Lawson. The Regional Municipality of Niagara will be holding its inaugural meeting of the Regional Council on November the 24th at 4 p.m. in council chambers at regional headquarters, followed by a reception at John Michael's Banquet Center. All board members are welcome to attend and are asked to confirm their attendance with board staff. The Niagara Regional Police Service is holding an auxiliary swearing-in ceremony on November the 29th at 7 p.m. right here in the community room at the headquarters. And Vice Chair Eek will be joining Deputy Chief Flynn and members of the NRPS executive staff in welcoming Niagara's 11 newest auxiliary officers to the Niagara Regional Police. David, thank you for doing that for me because I won't be around. No committee meetings scheduled for December, and the next board meeting is going to be scheduled for Thursday, December the 15th at 9 a.m. In this community room right here at headquarters. Any questions? Seeing none. Chief, report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good morning. Board members may have noticed that we've added Niagara Regional Police Service branded ball caps to the uniform issued to frontline members. Got one of the hats here, and I can pass it around perhaps. Recognizing that many other police services have already gone down this road in an effort to ensure the functionality of the uniform, while also making the police officers on patrol more approachable. Each frontline officer, along with our core or community-oriented response and engagement unit officers, as well as our traffic enforcement members, have been issued a ball cap that is able to be worn while in uniform and on duty as an alternative to the forge cap, should they choose. Members will retain their currently issued police forge caps, which will remain the headdress for all formal functions. Just wanted to talk about the upcoming Cop Shop event on Wednesday, November 30th. Niagara Regional Police members will be participating in the Cop Shop 2022, which I think is like 21st annual event for this for the Cop Shop. It's an annual nationwide event hosted at shopping centers across Canada, including the Penn Centre in St. Catharines. This is one of our most popular events with our officers, special constables, and our auxiliaries, where they're paired with a child who may not be able to afford items for over the Christmas holiday season. Our members get to take the kids on a shopping spree with a $150 gift card that is donated by the Penn Centre for the cause. The unique event provides an opportunity for children from various elementary schools across Niagara to meet and spend time with Niagara Regional Police officers. A pizza lunch is included. Our members who participate in this event consistently experience just how rewarding it is to make a difference in a child's life at Christmas time. And the students are picked up in a limousine, and they're provided with a police escort to the Penn Centre. It's really just an awesome event, and if you don't feel good after that event, there's something wrong. It's really a fun time. Just wanted to talk a little bit about 2022 homicide statistics. We did not have any homicide or attempt homicides that occurred during the reporting period of October 25th to November 15th. So far in 2022, we've had 8 homicides and 7 attempt homicides. Comparatively, we had 6 in 2021, 5 homicides in 2020, 7 in 2019, and 2 in 2018. Just with respect to traffic fatalities and serious collisions, there were 2 fatal motor vehicle collisions in October, and there was 1 life-threatening injury motor vehicle collision in October. To date, we have experienced 15 fatal collisions from January 1st until October of this year, October 31st. Comparatively, for all of last year, we had 21. And in 2020, we had 16 13 in each of 2018 and 2019 and 16 in 2017. So our numbers are trending favorably. On just some information on those collisions, on Wednesday, October the 5th, 2022 at approximately 7:51 p.m. emergency services personnel responded to a report of a serious collision in Thorold involving a Harley Davidson motorcycle that collided with a Hyundai motor vehicle. Initial investigation determined that the operator of the motorcycle, a Pelham man in his 50s, was found to be in critical condition. He was transported to a local hospital where he was later pronounced deceased. The driver of the Hyundai, a St. Catharines man in his 60s, was also transported to a local hospital with minor injuries and was subsequently released. That collision remains under investigation by detectives with our collision reconstruction unit. And then on Tuesday, October the 11th, at 8:12 p.m., 8 district officers responded with the West Lincoln Fire Department and Niagara EMS paramedics for a serious collision on Regional Road 65 between Smithville Road and Caister Center Road in Township of West Lincoln. Upon arrival, officers determined an adult male was operating a tricycle motorcycle west on Regional Road 65 near Caister Center Road when a collision occurred with a farm tractor. As a result of the collision, the motorcycle operator sustained life-threatening injuries and was transported to a hospital by paramedics, where unfortunately he was later pronounced deceased. The driver of the farm tractor was not injured, and that collision also remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit. On Sunday, October 30th at approximately 1:08 p.m., 5 district officers responded with the Fort Erie Fire Department and Niagara EMS paramedics to Garrison Road near Douglas Street in the town of Fort Erie for a serious collision. Initial investigation determined that a Harley Davidson motorcycle and a Ford pickup truck collided on Garrison Road. The male driver of the motorcycle, a 70-year-old resident of Fort Erie, received life-threatening injuries and was transferred to an out-of-town hospital by air ambulance. The driver of the pickup, a 72-year-old West Lincoln resident, was not injured. Currently, this 70-year-old motorcycle driver remains in hospital in serious condition, and that too remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction detectives. Some items in the news. On November 6th, 2022 at 5:14 p.m., 1 district officers responded to a disturbance in the city of Thorold. Upon arrival, it was determined that an adult male was causing a disturbance inside the hallway of a building. Officers located the male, and while speaking with him, he suddenly attacked the officers, punching and pushing them without warning. The male struggled violently as officers attempted to arrest him. They used a taser, which allowed the male to be arrested and handcuffed. The 3 officers involved received minor injuries. A 19-year-old male is facing 3 counts of assault police and 1 count of resist arrest. In October this year, detectives assigned to the Major Drugs and Gang Unit commenced an investigation into the distribution of illegal drugs throughout the city of Thorold. On November 7th, 2022, detectives received judicial authorization to execute a search warrant as a residential address near the intersection of Ormond Street and Town Line Road East. In total, detectives recovered 478.4 grams of suspected fentanyl and 285 opioid pills suspected to be hydromorphone, Dilaudid, and oxycodone. The combined estimated value of the drug seized was just over $121,000. As a result of this investigation, 3 suspects have been arrested and are facing several drug-related charges. Great work getting those deadly drugs off the streets of Niagara. 8 district uniform officers and detectives from our central fraud unit are investigating a rash of grandparent scam incidents. Investigators have reason to believe that a criminal team is active in the area targeting West Niagara vulnerable seniors. There have been 8 known victims and financial losses exceeding $63,000. In an effort to educate members of the public, we have ensured proactive messaging is posted on all of our NRPS social media channels. We've communicated with members of the local media to reach members of our community who may not necessarily be on social media. As presented a few months ago to the board, the point of sales scam intervention program has been designed with detectives from our central fraud unit to create awareness and education to retail and financial institution employees with the goal of providing intervention at the point of sale, so that if we come upon somebody who may be victimized and not realize it, there is that other avenue of intervention. Retailers and financial institutions are encouraged to download the education program for their employees. The new education program works in conjunction with the NRPS poster that we've issued to support employees, which can also be found online and available for download. 1 district officers recovered 2 loaded handguns and 27 rounds of ammunition, resulting in 2 arrests and 14 criminal charges stemming from separate incidents in the city of St. Catharines recently. The first incident occurred on November 13th at a downtown St. Catharines nightclub. A security guard inside the nightclub observed a patron with what appeared to be a handgun in his waistband. The security guard intervened and took physical control of the handgun, prompting the suspect to flee on foot. 1 district officers responded to the area and became involved in a foot pursuit with security. The suspect was located by officers a short distance away and was arrested. The handgun seized by security was determined to be loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition. The second unrelated incident occurred less than an hour later on Sunday, November 13th at 2:09 a.m. after our communications unit received information from the OPP regarding a vehicle that they had attempted to stop, a speeding vehicle they had attempted to stop on the QEW near Victoria Avenue in the town of Lincoln. The vehicle was later observed by 1 district officers in the area of St. Paul West and Pelham Road in St. Catharines. The driver fled on foot and officers engaged in a foot pursuit, during which the suspect was observed discarding what appeared to be a handgun. Driver was ultimately apprehended by pursuing officers and arrested. A loaded handgun with an extended magazine containing 16 rounds of ammunition was recovered. Again, these types of incidents, unfortunately, are bringing public awareness to the fact that we are seeing an increased prevalence of firearms in our community, and really speaks to the potential violence that our officers can be exposed to out on the front line. So we appreciate all their efforts in getting these firearms off the streets of Niagara. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Questions to the Chief's report? Seeing none, thank you. At this time, we're going to have a presentation, item 7.1, organized crime in Ontario and Niagara. We have Staff Sergeant Matt Hodges, Special Investigative Services Unit of the NRPS. And Matt will give a presentation to the board that provides an overview of organized crime in Niagara. A copy of the service's State of Organized Crime in Niagara presentation is included today, as well as a document produced by Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police, Organized Crime Committee, titled Out of the Shadows, which provides an overview of organized crime in Ontario and the challenges these groups create for police services across Canada. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, board, senior staff. Thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to come down here and share what I'm seeing as the staff sergeant in charge of special investigative services. If you want to move ahead there. So these are some of the topics I'm going to discuss. You've heard the chief mention the increase in firearms in our community. That's one of the more alarming things that we're seeing through an intelligence lens upstairs in SIS. I'll discuss a little bit about organized crime and what we're seeing to that end, and with our outlaw motorcycle gang presence in the region. So starting with our motorcycle gang presence, we have two main groups. We have the Hells Angels of Niagara, and we have the Outlaws. Currently, the way things stand, the Outlaws and the Hells Angels groups, their membership isn't increasing right now. It seems to be somewhat stagnant. A lot of the recruiting efforts that we're seeing are within what we call puppet clubs. So you can see two other patches below the Hells Angels. One is the Branded Souls of Niagara, and the other is the Regulators. So the idea of a puppet club, from what we can tell, is that some of the more obvious criminality is committed by the puppet clubs, allowing the main clubs or the parent clubs to sort of distance themselves from some of that criminality. So the trends that we're seeing currently in Niagara, a bit more of a push in terms of recruiting and adding membership to the Branded Souls and the Regulators, as opposed to the main groups being the Hells Angels and the Outlaws. Okay. I'm going to move into street gangs. So far, we have detected members from 32 active gangs in the region since 2021. Now, when I say documented or active gang members, this isn't a belief by officers. There's an investigative process that's undertaken prior to actually documenting somebody as a gang member. In SIS, I have an intelligence officer. That's his portfolio. He works solely on digging through documentation, be it reports. He works very regularly with the Toronto Police Service Guns and Gangs unit. There's a constant back and forth and a daily effort to identify people coming to our region, people moving around Southern Ontario, and applying this investigative method to properly identify people as gang members. On top of our intelligence member, we also have a newly formed provincial unit. It's funded by the Ontario government. It's led by the OPP. So it's a new Ontario gang investigators group. We have a member that was assigned about 3 months ago. They work closely with the Toronto Guns and Gangs unit. And we also have a member within the Provincial Weapons Enforcement Unit, another OPP-led joint force operation. So between our intelligence member, the provincial weapons member, the provincial gang investigator, that forms our group here in Niagara. And it's a constant process of intelligence sharing. That's where we sort of generate some of these stats. The gangs that we're seeing predominantly originate out of the GTA. We do have intelligence that have noted members from Montreal and Nova Scotia as well. And since January, the Special Investigative Services have documented 159 members who've had contact with a uniformed member of the Niagara Regional Police. Okay. Just some of the trends we're seeing in terms of criminality, as the chief alluded to. There's an obvious change in the number of firearms we're coming across. So traditionally and to date, gangs in the Niagara region remain transient in nature. We're seeing a lot of back and forth between Niagara and Toronto, where a gang member or a group will come into Niagara, set up at a local drug house, they'll work for a few days, and then they'll go back to Toronto. This transient nature makes it challenging for law enforcement. You know, if somebody comes here and sets up long term, we eventually find out about them. We can take our time with the investigation. With this transient nature, it does pose significant investigative challenges, but these are things that we're trying to deal with through the joint force operation. With that increased cooperation between all the police services through Southern Ontario, led by the OPP, it's really improving the communication and how we track gang members throughout Southern Ontario, up north into other remote areas in the province. So some of the offenses we're seeing here, drug trafficking, human trafficking. We're seeing an increase in firearms. We're seeing robberies and takeovers of some of our drug houses, which lead to major assaults and home invasions and incidents such as those. In the past few years, we've seen some significant shooting incidents here in Niagara. I've highlighted a few for you here. All this to say that firearms instances or violent incidences with firearms are increasing in our area. And again, through the investigative process, we've been able to attribute the violence and the criminality to specific gangs within the Toronto area, within the GTA. So again, Niagara's not immune. Niagara's not the only region that's dealing with this problem. As you can see, if you've read the Out of the Shadows document, this is a provincial issue. Niagara's not alone in facing these challenges. This is happening across the province. The Niagara region we've seen over the last little while tends to be an attractive area for gang members and for people who want to get involved in human trafficking or drug trafficking because of the way our region is set up with casinos, a lot of nightclubs and an active nightlife. People can come here and make a lot of money in a short amount of time. Another change that I'm seeing here, I've been a police officer for about 20 years. When I worked street drugs, it was rare to see a firearm in a house or in a car. It was common to see a baseball bat or brass knuckles, or people armed themselves, just not necessarily with firearms. And in the last little while, we're noticing that some of our local drug dealers are now arming themselves, likely because of the change in culture within street level drug dealing. When you have gang members coming down and influencing the culture, a lot of our local drug dealers we find now are arming themselves to counteract that. So not only are we seeing an increase with active gang members, but also with our local drug dealers trying to protect themselves while they operate within that low level or mid level drug trafficking culture. And finally, with another trend that we're noticing with street gangs, although they are predominantly transient, coming into the region for short periods of time and then leaving, we are starting to notice some gang members either renting apartments more long-term, trying to buy property in the Niagara region or purchasing property, be it a house or a business. So we're starting to see gang members becoming more entrenched in our community and becoming more permanent residents. And we anticipate that trend to continue moving forward. So shifting gears now to organized crime. The Niagara region is subject to traditional and non-traditional organized crime syndicates. As a service or as a unit in SIS, we're focused on disrupting the behavior and disrupting the criminality through investigative means. People can make a lot of money through organized crime efforts. We often try and go after assets where it tends to hit them the hardest through currency seizures, seizures of properties, businesses, toys like boats or cottages. These are some of the efforts that we're trying to undertake and they're generally through joint force operations with the assistance of the PPSC, the Provincial Prosecution Services of Canada, who offer specialized prosecution support to our projects. Niagara, again, geographically, we are a valuable location for organized crime because of where we're situated with 3 international borders, casinos. It is an attractive area for organized crime to operate. Traditionally, we saw, I'll explain the difference very as simplistic as I can, traditional versus non-traditional. If anybody here has watched The Sopranos, that's your traditional organized crime model. It's essentially a silo. It's very controlled, a lot of structure. There's leadership within the group. So 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to know who was conducting criminality, let's say in the Hells Angels or the Outlaws, you could set up, watch their clubhouse, see who's coming and going, figure out who the president, the vice president, and so on. And you would have an idea of the criminality happening within that organized traditional structure. Then you have a more non-traditional, and this is what we're seeing more and more of, and I'll explain it a little more in a moment. But we're seeing those silos or those traditional criminality structures are now starting to work with one another. So we're moving away from traditional, and these silos are now working together within Niagara, within the province, within Canada, and internationally. And these are trends that we've seen now. So you can change the slide. Going back to 2012, if you remember Project Inc. Involving Nick Nero, who was a local Niagara Falls fellow. That project was sort of the first time that we really started to realize how different groups are coming together to make a whole lot of money. This was also the first time that we saw a Mexican drug cartel presence within the Niagara area and Southern Ontario overall. Project Gateway is another example. These were great projects that really allowed us to greater understand how organized crime is coming together to effectively operate and cooperate with one another. And it's really shown the importance of the police community doing the exact same thing. We have to work together. Organized crime isn't just here in Niagara. It's not just in Toronto. It's all over the place. And if we don't work together as law enforcement agencies and collaborate, we're really behind the eight ball. A recent example is Project Gateway. I won't get into too many details in relation to that project, but it's a very recent example. And I can speak to maybe some of the trends that we've noticed out of that project. So next slide. So as you can see here, cells can operate independently. The cells can operate in a traditional method within a silo, if you will, but then those silos oftentimes can come together. And you can see here, and it's not uncommon for us to see, I mean, in Project Inc., for example, we had Nick Nero, who was collaborating with organized crime members in Toronto and Montreal. And then from there, they had distribution network. There was an importation scheme. There were certain groups responsible for bringing the coke across the border in transport trucks. And then you had distribution to get the cocaine out to the buyers. You had money laundering cells. You had multiple cells coming together to effectively get cocaine from one country to another and then to bring the money back. So extremely sophisticated. And I think right around 2012 in Project Inc., that's when we realized what we were dealing with in terms of technology. As technology has changed, technology helps all facets of society, business, policing. It also helps organized crime groups. During Project Inc. and Roadmaster, we saw organized crime members using encrypted devices with servers offshore that we couldn't intercept. So a traditional wiretap, for the most part, wouldn't work. We really had to start getting creative with our investigative means and how we start understanding and capturing the evidence to prosecute some of these groups. So you can see here the inner workings of let's say an organized crime group, be it traditional or non-traditional, our bikers, street gangs. They've all figured out ways to profit off of one another. And the level of sophistication that we're seeing as a result is posing some investigative challenges, but we're up for the task. So these are some of the offenses that we've seen most recently. Obviously in Project Inc. and Project and some of the earlier drug projects, we were able to get 100 kilograms of cocaine, and what a sexy picture that is for media, and sometimes as an investigator you can get distracted and chase that sort of sexy commodity. But what we're finding more and more is that organized crime are quite clever and intuitive, and they've been able to capitalize on some of the loopholes in cannabis legislation, gambling, tobacco importations and exportations. So offenses that I guess on the surface aren't sexy or don't produce big media splashes, but the amount of money that's being generated by some of these, I guess, quote unquote, lesser offenses are generating enormous profits for organized crime. And we're seeing that those enormous profits are then being used to finance some of the other criminality. like the cocaine importations, things that are a little more costly as a criminal, but they're being funded by some of the quote unquote lesser crimes. And as a unit up in SIS, we discuss this quite frequently. And what we're seeing is that it's not the commodity that equates to violence. So the violence isn't caused by a cocaine trafficker, it's the potential for profit and control. So if we ignore the cannabis investigations, the illegal gambling investigations, there's an enormous amount of power and control that can be derived from those big profits. And if somebody feels slighted, that's where we end up with the violence, be it a gang war or drive-by shootings and some of these things that we have seen across the province in relation to organized crime. So next slide. So just to give you an example, if you were an individual who wanted to misuse 2 cannabis licenses, so you have 2 licenses, you're going to produce illegally, you're going to overgrow 500 plants. You're looking at a value of about $500,000. In a calendar year, you can easily get through 3 cycles. So you can grow, take down, grow, take down. That can happen 3 times. So increasing your yield 3 times. At the end of the day, you're looking at about just shy of a $4 million profit. Now that's just 2 licenses. So you can imagine some of the money that's being made by organized crime members, not just in Niagara, but all over the province, and the amount of money that's being earned through these illicit activities of so-called lesser offenses. Go ahead, Stephanie. So again, what we're seeing here, the groups are no longer working in silos. They have the technology that they need. Nowadays, it's as simple as an app. There's a handful of them that you can download on your iPhone. You know, your criminal counterpart on the other side of the country, within Canada or in anywhere in the world, can download that app. And technologically, we have challenges then intercepting those communications and collecting evidence. So the number one challenge as an organized crime investigator is that technology. So we really have to be creative in how we investigate these types of cases. And we are finding success through some techniques. But as we become more sophisticated, we always seem to be about a half step behind the level of sophistication for an organized crime member who's motivated, has a ton of money behind them, isn't restricted by laws and rules and guidelines and general orders. If it makes sense to them and they have the money to finance it, they're doing it. They're limited by their imaginations. Cryptocurrency is posing problems in terms of money laundering investigations, tracking currency. It's really changed the landscape on how organized crime groups or silos exchange money. And what we've seen most recently in one of our investigations, there was criminality happening here in Canada, criminality happening in the US. Our laws aren't necessarily the same. They're actually quite different. And things that happen in the US that law enforcement are allowed to do, we then can't rely on it here in Canada. So some significant investigative challenges when you have a group operating in different countries. So some of the some recent examples of criminality that we've seen cocaine importations, drug trafficking, cannabis exportation, which generated an enormous amount of profit for that group. Tobacco smuggling. We observed human smuggling into the US using boats, and some high-end thefts where high-end vehicles are being stolen throughout the GTA, brought here to Niagara, loaded into shipping containers, sent overseas. So I guess the importance of this slide is to make you aware that some of the more sophisticated and more intelligent organized crime groups, they're not limiting themselves to one commodity or one criminal scheme. They'll operate 4 or 5 different schemes. So let's say the organized car theft ring gets intercepted by police and a few people get arrested. They're still operating 3 or 4 other types of criminality, and the revenue just continues. So we're seeing a diversification in terms of criminality amongst our high-level organized crime members. And that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer the best I can.
Great, thanks, Staff Sergeant. Questions from, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair, through you. I guess we just had a budget meeting earlier where we spoke about getting the federal and provincial governments to fund more money. You have the business case right there, explaining that thoroughly, that we should be pursuing some other funding at a higher level to help us with that, especially if you have to work with different other police agencies. It's a cross-border issue, and I think it's critical that we press that along, because I know we talked about it at budget. That was one comment. Just on, this is more for what I'm seeing in my local municipality. I'm just looking at your slide here. New trend in emerging purchasing of property. I guess my question there is, do you see a lot of property being purchased and just sit vacant, like housing? Like I see that. Is that typically leading to cause from some of this criminality that's happening? Because it's affecting our neighborhoods, it's affecting housing. And I just see these houses quite expensive that are bought and they're just sit there vacant. So maybe if you could address that a little bit.
To be honest, I can't think of a specific example where an organized crime group has purchased property and just let it sit. I'm seeing the purchase of property and the more permanent residency amongst gang members, people migrating from the GTA, coming down here, probably enjoying the high quality of life here in Niagara and wanting to set up shop. So I don't have any specific examples for you where organized crime are purchasing residences or businesses and not utilizing them here in Niagara.
Yeah, just the follow-up. It was more to if we should make police notify police that these houses are vacant, and if it ties into this. I wasn't sure, so that's why I asked the question. But I could see that maybe using those for their own use, and I see that quite a bit in my own community through a couple of the comments the chief made earlier in terms of what police resources are being used to break down some of these houses in terms of trafficking drugs. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chief.
Thanks, Chair. Just if I could comment with regards to some of the funding that we are receiving. We're very, very fortunate to have a good working relationship with CISO, which is the Criminal Intelligence Service of Ontario. And quite frankly, these major investigations, joint forces are involved in them. They can't happen without the funding that's provided by the CISO. Traditionally funding up to 50% of the projects. So we have benefited immensely from the cooperation and funding that we receive through CISO. I sit as one of the executive governing body members approving projects and funding. So see firsthand the benefits that we receive through government funding.
Oh, no, that's excellent that you mentioned that. I just see from a perspective here, we're on an international border. I think the federal government needs to play a greater role in funding some of the costs that we have as a service, because some of the other services across Ontario don't have that extra layer that they have to deal with. So that's from my point of view, but I'm glad we're getting funding. I'm glad you're sitting on those committees to voice our concerns here in Niagara that we need proper funding to deal with some of these issues. Thank you.
Good. Member Gibson.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you, staff. Excellent report. What defines a gang? Number of people, criminality type? Can you advise on that, please?
So some of the, and I'm not a gang expert. I want to start off by saying that. This would probably be a better question for my intelligence officer, but I do know that when you're looking at an individual and trying to classify them as a member, there is a set criteria. Some of the things that they look at, so criminal associations, who are some of the people they're with, the clothing worn, social media. There's an enormous social media presence amongst gang members in the GTA. They use social media platforms to gain credibility. They threaten other gangs through social media platforms. So through a careful analysis of a lot of the social media things or social media postings that are out there, gang signs, the way they hold their hands, There's an extensive analysis that goes into this. It's not easy to go to court and have somebody designated as a gang member. There's a whole lot of work that goes into that. It's not done lightheartedly, that's for sure.
Okay, thank you. And if I may continue, how many members are on your unit?
In SIS as a whole,
Yeah, your unit dealing with what you've spoken about today, the organized crime.
so on the organized crime front, I have a sergeant. I have 5 intelligence members. I have multiple joint force members, be it the biker enforcement unit, provincial gangs, proceeds of crime, provincial joint forces cannabis team. I have 2 members there. I think I'm capturing all of them. There's a crime analyst as well. And then I have, so their portfolio on the intelligence side is to keep track of different groups, so that, let's say there's a gang related homicide, the investigators can come to the intelligence officers and say, hey, this is what we just had happen. What do you know about it? Or what can you tell us about this group? So they're constantly working to maintain their portfolios on different sections of criminality. Then I have a major drug and gang team, and they're the enforcement team. So they're the ones actually going out, and the recent arrest that the chief alluded to, the fentanyl case, that was the major drug team that went out, conducted that investigation, wrote the search warrants, made the arrest, and will be responsible for the subsequent prosecution. So there's an intelligence side to it and an enforcement side.
Okay, thank you. And on your enforcement side would be how many bodies?
I have a sergeant. I believe I have 6 or 7 constables. And then I have an opioid enforcement unit that also falls under that major drug sergeant.
Okay, and are you able to keep up, or are you picking and choosing your offenses that you can work with? I'm looking at number of people working. Do we need more people, more resources in this section? I mean, let's face it, organized crime, half the shootings water down from organized crime. A lot of the street crime, is from organized crime. If we can make sure that we're attacking organized crime the best we can, it may help, resolve some of these other issues. So I just really look and say, how well resourced are we in your unit? Do we need more?
And drug work is a little bit unique in that the more drug work you do, the better the quality, the more information you get, the more investigations you can work. I think that our members do an incredible job. They're an extremely hardworking group. They're dedicated to their craft. I mean, if you gave us 100 detectives, I'm sure we could, I'd be thrilled, but that's obviously not, that's not realistic. I think that the resources that I have are manageable. They do work extremely hard, and these long-term projects that we get into, I know the community sees the media splash, but the work that goes behind that media splash, the 10 months of 14, 18-hour shifts, being away from their families, the expectation. I worked in that unit, my parents and my in-laws, without them I couldn't have worked in that unit. So they're demanding jobs. I'm really proud of the members that I have under my command. They're an incredible group, and I think they're doing an incredible job.
Okay, thank you. And thank them for us, because I know personally the amount of commitment that's required to work in one of those units. It's a huge amount of work and family sacrifice as well. So congratulations to everybody that works in there. Keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Thank you. Member Gale.
Yeah, through you to the chief, I'm wondering why this is in public and not in confidential, and you would have stopped some of these questions, especially, I'm not blaming Member Gibson, I just thought that, why is this public? What was the purpose of it? Because I thought we've given some stuff here. If I was a member of organized crime, I'd be watching. I know this isn't too much nitty gritty, but please.
The report Out of the Shadows is a public document, so it was really an opportunity which provides a snapshot of organized crime in the province. And this was really an opportunity to provide a snapshot of what we're experiencing in organized crime in Niagara. I agree. we've been walking a bit of a tightrope as to what we can provide and what we can't provide. If we're going to get into specifics about a particular investigation, that's where we would we draw the line.
Okay, I was just waiting for you to interject when he was being asked how many officers we have. I think it was knowing there's other bigger groups that are watching over it that you're with, but I just wonder what the value of this, other than telling the people we need more money to help you out on these investigations and that. I just wanted to put it out there. I would have rather seen this in confidential, but thank you.
Marik?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I thank you for your presentation and around the topic we're just discussing regarding Member Gale. I think it is important to let the community know that organized crime and to most people within our community are it's not evident that it's going on or it's invisible to most people, but I think the short capture of this presentation makes the public aware that there is some depth here within the region and reaching out beyond that across the province to put down the organization of crime. And an old topic that seems to be from the Niagara region and most regions across Ontario is the aspect of cannabis. You highlighted it's one of the lower classes, shall we say, in the organization impact, but it's a highly valuable business for organized crime. It's kind of like the keepsake that keeps on giving. And we have tried so many times to the federal government, because this was introduced from the federal government and handed down, and it's been expressed many times at this table how little knowledge we have of if you gave an example, if a license has been given for 1,000 plants, they could be operating 1,500 or 2,300, and we have no knowledge, or it's very difficult to get knowledge feedback from the federal government in order that we can stop or stop the implications of lawlessness around the sale of cannabis and the production of cannabis. So but you stressed how important it is to organize crime. And although it's a low level, criminal example to the region, it's most important. And you could probably discuss that within the region and the population of the public, because they may be sitting next door to one with the smell and the odor and the inference of the sale of this, or around their school with their children. And it's a shame, but all those things were not supposed to be apparent when the sale of cannabis was enacted. But it's a beef that we continue, and I hope we don't stop, but I would like to think we're going to hear something back to assist you and your policing company to stop this. So just a comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? So Staff Sergeant, thank you, and your team out there. I mean, we know what they're up to, and I know Member Gibson in his days with the RCMP, and we've had conversations, did a lot of the same stuff. So he knows exactly where you guys stand and how hard your team does work. So again, thank you. Fantastic report, very interesting. I did read a book with the boat, Mr. Nero, that's out. Was given to me actually by the author, and it's very interesting how many pages of that book have Niagara mentioned in it. So it is wide reaching. So
That entire book came from Niagara Evidence through our investigative efforts.
Yeah.
I've read it as well.
yeah. So anyways, if I could have members Gale and Gibson move that this presentation be received. Seeing no further questions, all in favor? That's carried. Right now, under section 8, we have our consent agenda. We have items 8.1 through to 8.9. If I could have members Gibson and D'Angela move that this information be received. Any questions to any of these? Dave?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to speak to the consent report 8.2. That's the Durham Regional Police who sent a letter to the Solicitor General of Ontario regarding the growing number of individuals in their region who are not receiving the proper mental health care and the attention they deserve, their families, and our communities. And they are requesting in this letter to the Ontario government to bring together an expert panel or key stakeholders to develop a real plan moving forward to address the interrelation complications of homelessness, opioid addiction, and mental health. And what I would like to do is to lend support from our regional police and seek a letter of support to both the federal and provincial governments regarding the request from the Durham policing facility. So we may have some discussion, Mr. Chair, on that.
Sure. Yeah. Chief?
Through you, Chair, certainly the issues that have been highlighted in this correspondence to the Solicitor General, very similar experience experience that we have here in Niagara, and really I would suggest is similar experience in every municipality across Ontario. We heard in the earlier presentation, there's the gun violence that's taking place, but also the mental health increase in mental health incidents where persons are in crisis. That's impacting us and every police service across the country. So if you're looking for us to assist the board in drafting a similar response, we could certainly assist and do so.
Thank you very much, Chief. Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It is a letter of support. As you say, given the similar problems here and all across Ontario and Canada, it's a very complicated interaction when you look at homelessness and opioid addiction and mental health, and they're all somehow related. But if we can get an expert panel and really focus in on the elephant in the room, shall I say, I think it's important, and I would appreciate if Chair Steele and Police Chief McCullough would draft a letter to show support to upper government. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Members, can we take that as direction to have Deb put together a letter and then we'll get that off? Okay. Chief, you can work with that. You and your staff can work with Deb on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Okay. Anything further under item 8? Oh, sorry, Henry.
It's a different item.
Yep.
Okay, it's 8.5. It's the annual report K9 unit. Just want to make a few comments on that. I just appreciate the work that K9 unit does. It was nice to see that. It's a sort of a good news story. I was reading here and you could see by the chart on page 3 that the K9 unit had 115 successful calls, which resulted in 72 arrests. That was up from the previous year. So through you, Chief, if you can provide just a thank you and a job well done by the K9 unit, because there was other instances here where they tracking, there's successful calls, there's evidence search, explosive search. So they do quite a bit for our community. And we'll see later on that there was a donation that's going to be made in a later report. So it's being recognized by the community at large that they're making an impact and making our Niagara region a little safer. So just pass on a job well done for them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and we'll be sure to pass those along to our K9 members. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Further questions? All those in favor to receive the reports? That's carried. Item 9, new business. 9.1 is the 2023 Niagara Regional Police Services and Police Services Board proposed operating budget, moved by members Eek and Gale, that the 2023 operating budget for the Niagara Regional Police Service and Police Services Board presented at the November 18th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting be received and the recommendations made be approved as follows. 1, the Police Service Board receive and approve the proposed 2023 operating budget for the police service and board, resulting in a total net expenditure budget before indirect allocations of $177,857,755. And that 2, the Police Services Board submit the consolidated budget of the service and the board to Regional Council for approval. Questions? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.2, approval of public donation, canine ballistic vest. Moved by members Gibson and Eek that the board approve a public donation in the estimated amount of $2,000 from Mr. Jerry Vermeer to cover the cost of 1 canine ballistic body armor vest to be donated to the Niagara Regional Police Services Canine Unit. Questions? There we go.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the chief. How do we acknowledge this man, or what's the background here? If you could tell me about this man. I know there's a report with it, but is there a way of soliciting more donations for this to help our budget? I don't care if it's for wheels on a cruiser, but something to help.
So this is just a member of the public who has expressed an interest in wanting to support our canine unit and provide our canine members with body armor. We're very thankful to Mr. Vermeer for his contributions. We didn't seek it out. It's something that he approached us on, and we're very appreciative and thankful for it.
So through you, Chair, I think this is wonderful, and it's a step in the right direction for people that can help us, especially wealthy people. I'm not saying this man is, or whatever the case may be, but they can help us to offset our costs. And if their hearts are in canine units or in other things, what do you intend? Do you intend on making a media splash on this, which I think is warranted, of somebody helping us, so it might inspire others to help?
We'd want to check with Mr. Vermeer first to see what his wishes or desires were. I don't believe that he's looking for that public notoriety, but we can check with him. And you know, at the very least, we were looking to send a card of thanks to him for his kind donation.
So one of the things there, when you're explaining to him, one of the things that was explained to me forever, because I've been involved in philanthropy around, my name's around, is people came to me, especially with the Lundy's Lane Museum that my family's name's on. They said that inspired others to donate on that, whether it's competitive, jealousy, or for the right reasons of just helping the community. It'd be nice if this person allowed for us, and I'm hoping he's watching this right now, to acknowledge him for this, because it might bring other people out to say, hey, we can help the police in this. We've had something happen to a family member. As well as this, we'd like to donate to that unit, providing, I know in the past we've said we don't want a major bank or a major oil company on the side wall of something for helping us, but I'm always appreciative of people stepping up and donating this. So I just hope this man is watching this and listening to what I'm saying right now and saying, you know, you might inspire others to help us. So please, thank you for that. But also the ripple effect is good on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair, and through you. It states Chief ballistic vest. Is it one vest?
Correct. It's one vest, and it's our intent to, within our budget, to purchase an additional 4 vests as well.
Okay, that's what I
So
was
that
just
all of our
wondering.
dogs have that capability as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Just so you know, the dog is named Maverick. That's getting the vest. That's what it says. Anyways, any more questions on this one? All in favor? That's carried. Item 9.3, Microsoft Enterprise License Agreement Renewal, moved by members D'Angelo and Eek, that the board approve the renewal of the 2 Microsoft Enterprise Agreement contracts at a yearly amount of $816,830, including HST, net of rebates, for a period of 3 years, as detailed in the direct enterprise enrollment and the direct server and cloud enrollment renewal quotes attached to the report. Questions? All in favor? That's carried. 9.4, Police Services Board request for revision to the November 22 and May 23 meeting dates, moved by members Gale and Gibson, that the board ratify its decision to change its regular monthly meeting date from November 24th, 2022 to November 18th, 2022. And further, that the board amend its May 2023 regular monthly meeting date from May 18th, 2023 to May 25th, 2023. Questions on this one? Yes.
I have a question a bit on the process on this computer, and this is through you to Deb. I've got green check marks beside mine, and before we voted on the last item, it was always marked down carried. Am I missing something here? And what are the green check marks that all of a sudden I see on our computers? I'm sorry, I'm not out to embarrass you. I have no clue what's going on here.
Vice Chair Eek had asked me at the break the same question, so we're gonna take a look at your iPads after the meeting.
Okay, I thought these were all approved by another council. Okay, very good, thank you.
Staff's so efficient, they know where we're going, Bob. Any questions then, aside from that one? All in favor? That's carried. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, we have one in-camera report, item 11.1, Special Investigations Unit, SIU case 22-OSA-009, incident of January the 16th of 2022, moved by members Eek and D'Angelo that in accordance with the board direction, the above noted report be received for public information. Questions? In favor? Carried. We are now adjourned. We thank everyone watching us at home. We thank those that zoomed in, and David, thank you for joining us today.